Nobody wants to think about their parents' death. But when you get to your 30s, 40s, 50s, when you start to see your mother, your father go through first maybe small health ailments and then secondarily some serious scares, and perhaps in many cases, many of my peers, I'm 37 years old, have probably had a parent passed away. We don't want to think about this, but there's going to be a day where they're no longer going to be here with us. And I thought about an interesting usage of AI. You know, there's probably so many people who have lost a loved one who would do anything in the world to hear their father, their mother, could be a brother, sister, a friend, like just to hear their voice again, right? Just to have one more conversation with that person. And I wonder, I know that the technology exists for something like this to take place, where perhaps by uploading all of the audio, video that you have of a certain person, you can build out a very basic model, AI, of that individual, so that when the day does come, right, when during that, whether it's a week, a month, 10 years after you lose someone and you just really want to hear their voice again, you really want to speak to them again, you could turn to this program and have a conversation, right? I think from a logistical standpoint, from a procedural standpoint, the way that you would do this is take as much video content as you can, audio content as you can. You probably input as much information about the individual, their personality, perhaps the style, the way that they speak, the principles, like you add all of that in to help the AI. You perhaps give background information about this person, how they grew up, right? The more that you feed into the model, the more that it would be able to, you know, depict, or it's really a guess, it's just really a educated guess, but to spit out a educated version of how you would that person would speak. And then I think if you build out, you know, humans were all individually distinct, but at the same time, we also follow similar archetypes of personalities. So when you start building out this model, it also helps every other iteration that comes after that. Perhaps there's also another way, you know, even in 2025, I doubt the majority of people have like hours of videos available to just simply upload, right? I think even here in the United States, many people do not really use the voice message function in the message chats. But in China, people use WeChat for voice message all the time. Latin America, people use WhatsApp with voice messaging all the time. I wonder if there's a way that you can perhaps share that information with this program. So you have a limitless, not limitless, but just a much higher quantity of audio to feed into the program to make it a more accurate representation of how that person would speak. Another way for you to improve upon the accuracy of the model is, man, I wonder if there's a market or a potential opportunity for you to have a almost like a venue. I'm not sure if I would call it a restaurant. It could be a restaurant. Let's just say it's a restaurant where your family gathers and everything during that scenario is recorded. The interaction is recorded, video, audio. You might have multiple cameras set up. And perhaps during that dinner, that 2-3 hour session where everything is recorded, there are certain prompts. It's almost like a game, right? Or interview. There's nothing to describe what I am envisioning right now. But there's no word that currently accurately describes this, but it would capture conversations, perhaps deeper conversation about family, about how your mother or father grew up. It would give the son and daughter opportunity to ask all the questions they ever wanted to know about that person, right? It would be an opportunity for everybody at that venue to say something profound and meaningful from the heart to one another. And if we can capture all of that, perhaps that could be a strong factor into the AI model as well. Now, all of this is just like spitballing me today. I literally came across this idea today. And I'm sure, like, I haven't done any research at all about this. I've never heard about this before, but I am certain that there are other people already thinking the same thing that I am. Even when I describe all of the potential around this, I also immediately think about what are the potential downfalls, right? Number one, privacy. If we have a scenario where we mass upload audio, video, whatever it may be, to this program, is there a possibility that leads to some type of invasion of privacy? Is that a possibility that it leads to some sort of catastrophe of a major data leakage? Especially when you're talking, when you think about the scenario where you're talking about everyday conversations, right? Could something sensitive be also included that you don't want to put in there? So that's number one. Number two is, all right, it's going to sound crazy for me to suggest this, but is there a possibility that by having a AI version of your mom and dad after they pass away, that you would appreciate them less while they are here and alive with you? Like, a lot of people are probably going to be taken aback by this suggestion, but I suggest this and put this out there because we've seen this before. I remember when I was 6, 7 years old here in the United States, every once in a while, every 2 or 3 months, we would receive a letter from China, from my grandparents, from my aunts and uncles. And I remember the joy that we would have as a family, my mother, my father, and I, in opening up these letters, seeing the update from the family members, maybe seeing a few photos being sent over as well. And after my parents would read the letter to me, tell me about my family, how they're doing, they would write a letter back to China. And they would write that letter. It would take 3 weeks to get back to China. It wasn't until I was maybe 10, probably like 10 years old, when we started calling each other. We didn't call each other because it was so expensive, even on a landline at that time, to call internationally. And when we did call each other, I believe it was cheaper to call from the United States to China. So if my grandparents ever called to New York, they would say hello. Okay, my mother would know that, okay, it's my grandfather calling. They would hang up. My mother would call back to China, right, just to get a better rate for that minute-by-minute charge. So we went from letters to landline calling. And then all of a sudden, 10, 20 years later, we had video chat. We were able to speak to one another through a mobile device. And my mother said this to me a few months ago. She feels like, even though now people are so easily connected, we have a video interface available for us at a moment's disposal. They now speak less today than they did 20, 30 years ago, when we were writing letters that took 1 month to go back and forth. um, we now care less about one another. It feels that way, right? Because we're always available to one another. So I think that there certainly is going to be a benefit of having this, I guess, the memory and the ability to speak to a loved one last forever, last, you know, after the person passes away. But we also do have to consider that, does that impact how we feel about, our loved ones while they are here today? It's probably the most interesting usage of AI that I have considered. But yeah, I hope that something like this, does take off.